Coming up on Digital Music Trends, we break out some virtual champagne for episode 200, recorded on the 10th of September 2014. Featuring news from almost every major streaming provider, we are shocked out of our summer lull by Apple and U2, Wimp, Deezer, Spotify, Rdio and Twitter. The show features special appearances from the Chief Commercial Officer of Wimp and the CEO of Music X-Ray, as well as a fantastic panel of guests from CD Baby, Your Turn and SF Music Tech. This week's show is brought to you by Play MPE, providing secure music distribution and promotional services to the world's largest labels for over 10 years. Play MPE can be accessed on Windows and Mac computers, iOS, Android and BlackBerry mobile devices. Find out more on plaympe.com. Hello everyone and welcome to Digital Music Trends. I'm Andrea Leonelli and this is a weekly show where we talk about and try to make sense of the latest news in the digital music industry. And this week, it's a real pleasure to be here with three fantastic guests. We have Kevin Brunner on the show, Director of Marketing at CD Baby. So hi Kevin and thanks for joining me. How's it going?
Hello, thanks for having me.
It's great to have you. And we have Olivier de Simone on the show, VP of Business Development at Your Turn. So hi Olivier. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting.
And we have Brian Zisk, the founder of SF Music Summit and SF Music Tech Summit. Oh, how could I get that wrong? And the founder of Future Money and Technology Summit. So hi, Brian, and thanks for joining me. How's it going?
It's going great.
I actually didn't do the normal intro where I go through all the paces because we have such a packed show, and it's a pretty special episode. It's a number 200 today, so I'm really hoping it's going to be good, and we have a mountain of news to cover. So it's I think the gods of podcasting are both shining upon me and also testing me to see if I can actually condense all of this into a 1-hour show, which should be fun. And I guess guys, we're going to talk about all that you're up to through the show. So we'll definitely make time for that. But I want to open by talking about Apple. Of course, I hope that people that are listening won't switch off at this point. But we gotta talk about this YouTube business. And of course, unless you have been living under a rock for the past week, and DMT is your only point of contact with the world, in which case I congratulate you on your tastes. But unless that happened, you will have heard about the Apple announcement that happened yesterday, where they unveiled the new iPhones and the Apple Watch. But we'll chat about the hardware a little bit later, perhaps as a side note. The real big news for the industry side of things is the fact that Apple partnered with U2 and essentially at the end of the keynote announced that they were going to distribute U2's new album, Songs of Innocence, to over 500 million iTunes accounts for free. It's kind of an imposed album in the sense that it will just appear on your account, whatever your preferences may be. And it's what's seen as the largest album distribution maneuver in history, essentially. So there's a lot to talk about here around this release. First of all, a first round on is this bad for the industry, and does this reinforce the notion of free? I think that's one of the first questions that people have been asking around this. So Kevin, any thoughts on that?
Well, Bono did make it clear that Apple paid for it. So, right. And actually, if you go to U2's website, there's an interesting post by Bono where he emphasizes that fact and explains that it's important for people to buy music for the future of other musicians, and that was why it was really important for them to make sure that point was made clear. But for them, they got a nice big payday. Exactly. And it got their music out there. I thought the most interesting thing to me is that something that Bono said was that we want as many people to hear this as possible. And I know they were disappointed with the release of the last album. Yeah. Didn't do well at all. Didn't connect with the fans. And to me, I think it really more struck to the chord of what artists really want, and I think is beyond money. It's that they want more people listening to their music and enjoying the art that they suffered through to create. So, but U2, I'm not going to cry for U2 that the last album didn't do well, but I'm sure it's a great move for them and to kind of get their name back out there in kind of an explosive way.
Exactly. It's kind of hard to say no to, right? You get probably like anywhere between $10 and $30 million check plus exposure to so many people. Brian, what do you think when you saw that happen?
Well, I mean, what industry are we talking about? Are we talking about the recorded music industry, or are we talking about the U2 industry? Because for the U2 industry, it's clearly a win-win. Now, when people talk about who's getting paid, I don't think people transfer the fact that it's free to them, but U2 is getting paid. I don't think that means anything to the public that U2 is getting paid. I think it's perceived as a free album, and that's tough for the industry because people have a limited amount of resources, and they're competing with everything from their cell phone bill to their, the candy at the store to pretty much anything. And when they know that, they're getting music from the biggest band in the world, not just them, but everybody is for free, it becomes much harder for people to justify that spending that music on other acts that aren't as big. Yeah. So is it something that U2 should have done for U2? Obviously, because they don't do anything that's not in their own self-interest. And in reality, they're probably going to make more money off of their tour and their pay-per-views and, all of these things. I mean, not to mention that they're probably getting more from Apple than they would from selling this on the open market. So clearly it's a win-win for them, especially in the staying relevant in the marketplace game. Yeah. Is it a win-win for the entire industry, where now it is forever going down that the biggest album of all time was given away for free? Yeah. Not a win-win for most people. Win-win for Apple and YouTube and people who otherwise would have paid for the album and now can hear it without listening to it. Yes, but the thing that's really interesting to me that I think we won't know what happens until later is you look at the declining sales of U2 albums, and they have been dropping off a cliff, and my hand wasn't in there, dropping off a cliff, apparently even greater than the rest of the industry. So how much would this have sold otherwise versus, first off, this big benefit from working with Apple, but then after the exclusive is over, they're, I believe, going to sell this through the other channels, through all the other services, and through physical as well. And it's very likely that in addition to this huge win, even without that part, that the promotional boost that they get from this program will cause them to sell more and make more even otherwise. So for U2, it was a no-brainer, but, for the rest of the industry, it's like, well. Thanks, guys.
And Olivia, from with your industry hat on, of course, Olivia worked for years at the Orchard as well, and a company that sold music essentially. How do you feel about this? Is it just a brand U2 thing, as Brian suggested, that it's got nothing to do with the industry as a whole? It's just something that U2 can do because it's U2.
Yeah, I think like U2. Well, we can only respect a band that has been like for so long in the industry and what a career. I have to say, like, yesterday I was a bit surprised and I had two feelings. The one was, is it right from Apple to do that? Coming with something where you download an album, where, in my opinion, now we are clearly in a new phase in the industry where the metric is the engagement. Yeah. So it's great to get 500 million people downloading an album. I find it personally a bit intrusive to get this on my iPhone today. But then second question is like, so how many people are going to listen to that? Is it really giving value to the piece of work they did in the studio? And my question was like, what about doing like the biggest stream ever instead? We know yesterday they got some problem with streaming with the show, but I was a bit surprised to get this as a download. And also to like basically compulsory getting this album on my iPhone and my computer.
Yeah, no, you make a great point there. I mean, I if you search for the words U2 and iTunes and delete, there are hundreds of tweets streaming, every hour about from people that are pissed off about this, that don't want the album to be there. So, like
personally, my playlist are like, it's a long time I don't use iTunes anymore, but like it's extremely personal.
Yeah.
So having something coming in my world of music is a bit bizarre.
Yeah, I mean that you know I thought that as soon as they announced it, I was like, really, it's just gonna appear? And a lot of people like ourselves perhaps use Spotify and other services as the primary way of consuming music these days. And I personally don't have any albums on my iTunes, so actually now the U2 album is the only album that appears in my iTunes library. Which I'm not sure how good of a thing it is.
You guys listen to the album?
That's how they're gonna pull you back in,
right? Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna when I accidentally press play on my Bluetooth headset, the YouTube album is gonna start playing because that's the only album I have in my library. So yeah, that's gonna be fun. Of course, it doesn't download automatically. You have to actually go and press the download button to get it. It's in your cloud, so okay, that's fair enough. But yeah, it is a bit of an intrusive move. The other thing I wanted to ask about is about the Beats side of things, because this is sort of the first sign of the tie-up between iTunes and Beats, because the company actually got the exclusive of the stream on the album for the duration of the Apple exclusive, which lasts until the 13th of October. What do you make of this? Do you think that Apple might be thinking about doing more of these, also to help the Beats music brand to get out of its shell and get more subscribers? Anybody want to take that?
Well, I know I saw a lot of people commenting right after it happened that they thought Beats kind of got the shaft in the whole thing, because they really didn't. It wasn't until afterwards they realized that it was going to be available on Beats as well.
Right.
I have a feeling that Apple has big plans for a better tie-in for them. It's just that Apple doesn't rush anything.
Yeah.
And so there'll be some better music events. iTunes is so due for a complete overhaul anyway. I have a feeling that they've got their sights on some announcement probably early in the spring or something of a whole new music ecosystem with iTunes and Beats and all that. But it did feel like when watching it that Beats kind of got the shaft. And actually what I really enjoyed was watching all the people I follow that work over at Google kind of moaning as this unfolded. Since they didn't, especially when Bono made the comment about we want to get it to the most people possible, and someone said, well, you should be releasing it on Android then. And so there was a lot of comments about that too.
That's funny. I should have followed that list on Twitter. That would have been funny. I guess the other thing to talk about is the fact that the iPod Classic has been discontinued, which is of course 99.9% of people won't care at all about this, but it's signals sort of a shift in strategy from Apple. Of course, this has been going on for years, but it kind of confirms, in a way, the death of the MP3 in the long term, and perhaps a shift to streaming sometime soon. I don't know. Brian, do you feel like that's sort of a correct?
Well, first in regards to Beats,
right.
It's so early in the acquisition that I wouldn't even
go there,
take anything away from that. And because there is the tie-in of the streaming, it does amplify. I think there with Ian and those guys, it's going to be fine.
They're still trying to pick out their offices right now. They haven't even done anything beyond that.
Yeah, I'm sure they're still dealing with HR.
Yeah.
Then in regards to the iPod, I don't think that's a big deal at all. I mean, I didn't follow exactly what they were discontinuing, but it was the Classic. But I mean, everybody's got it on their phone, so I don't really think that the fact that you're discontinuing a single-purpose device really says anything at all, except that demand showed that people would rather buy an iPod Touch that could also be on the internet as opposed to an iPod that can't. So I don't see any significance.
I was prodding you on that one because I don't think that either. But I just wanted to make the point. And
plus, the new iPhones do have much larger storage capacity. They skipped the 32 gig and went to 64. So
that's really annoying, actually, isn't it? It's like, why do you do 16 and then 64? Do 32 and 64? It's like it's just being cheap at that point, right? No?
Well, I think you want to limit the number of options. And what I kind of see is, and it's interesting because, I had a bigger iPhone and then I won an iPhone in a raffle, a newer one, but it only has 16 megs on it. And it's really interesting because it's no longer nearly the media device. I mean, it's great for streaming music, but I had to throw away a bunch of apps. I had to throw away the movies. I had to throw away all of these things. So I think it really is splitting the market into, well, if you just want it as a phone that's on the internet, but you don't really want it as an internet storage device, you get the really little one. And if you really want, the other thing I will say is the prices for additional storage have come down substantially.
Right.
It used to be Apple would charge a much greater differential for, an additional 16, of RAM. And so it's not that surprising to me that they have like the cheap model and then a model that actually works, as opposed to having these sort of tweener models.
Yeah, absolutely. I was so glad that I got the 32 gigs 2 years ago. I'm still on a 5, so hopefully I will be able to
And I'll tell you, that's probably what's going to cause me to buy a 6. I mean, I won this 5C, and I love it in a lot of ways, but it's just not, and I'll tell you, maybe I could have lived with it if I had started with a smaller phone, but transferring my data from a 4S that had more data to a 5C that is now overloaded, I'm really going to consider one of the 6s.
Absolutely. Olivia, are you going to get an Apple Watch? We haven't talked about that yet.
You asked me this because I'm Swiss, or?
Yeah.
So it's like...
You guys are in trouble.
I could lose my passport saying this, but I never got any watch. So the big question for me is like, do I need one?
Right.
Because I just never got this. I have to say, like yesterday, the show was like quite amazing, and there is tons of stuff like that are amazing. I was really impressed with like everything about the fitness and all that, and you're like, okay, I want to be better, etc. I think it's also we get a little bit older in our careers now, so it's not about how many drinks we get at Meetem or Sauce by Sauceways, but how much we run now.
Yeah.
It's the things we share. But I'm not sure I want one yet. But once you see it, it's Apple, right? So once you see it, you touch it, you're like, okay, and you pay. So I wouldn't be surprised if you see me with one at some point.
Nice, yeah. And of course, it's going to come out in January 2015, again, for those that were living under a rock for the last 24 hours. It's so weird now with the news cycle. It just feels like, this feels like old news, and it's happened like less than 24 hours ago, right? It's so bizarre. I'm almost bored myself talking about it. And so, in that sense, maybe we should switch to talk about one of the other 5 major news that we have to talk about today, which is insane. And so, without further ado, actually, I was going to talk about lossless audio. So first of all, the Norwegian music service WIMP has unveiled a new service called TIDAL, which is a high quality, hi-fi music service that will launch in the UK and the US later this fall, probably in October at some point, 2014. TIDAL is an interesting proposition because it's a very cool design. It's going to be a very high-end service catering to people that care about sound quality. WIMP has got a library of over 20 million tracks that are at 44.1 kilohertz, so CD quality, 16-bit, and they decided to target this market of people that are willing to pay $20 a month or £20 a month for their music. And I actually interviewed Peter Tonstad, the company's chief commercial officer, last night, and here is a short extract of that interview. It's a real pleasure to be here with Peter Tonstad from the company WIMP. So hi Peter, and thanks for joining me. How's it going?
Hi there, thanks, great.
It's great to have you from Oslo. And so the company had a big announcement this week, really exciting stuff, and you announced a new service essentially called TIDAL, which is going to launch in the UK and in the US this fall. So first of all, when were the first seeds for TIDAL planted, and when you first started thinking about this?
Yes, I think the first seeds, come from our initial launch of streaming service back in 2010, when we had this emphasis on manual curation of editorial, trying to make a service that was different than other services for the real true music lovers, and then understanding that sound is obviously an important part of that let's say offering. So we launched our WIMP Hi-Fi service October last year, and when we saw the general initial interest around sound quality on streaming and for WIMP Hi-Fi particularly. Then we started getting ideas and ambitions about geographical expansion outside of our current markets, and realizing that what we want to do to stand out is to make sure we're perceived as the premium service for streaming, having the curation part from before, adding the sound quality. We added videos in HD, adding other stuff in the future. We needed to be perceived as a very high-end service, and then we also recognized that WIMP as a brand name is probably a challenge matching that market position in English-speaking languages or countries. So that's when we made the choice of launching a new brand with our hi-fi service in UK and US now initially.
It's really exciting because it feels like you have an altogether new design. It's a very slick, very researched. So did you spend a lot of time figuring out how you wanted to position the design of the service as well?
A lot. I think we always took design seriously, also from WIMP. But yes, to make it, let's say, reflect all the brand values we want in this being a high-end service. Majestic, sophisticated is the kind of brand recognition linked to the name. Yeah. And we put a lot of work into making this look nice. So making it, let's say, stand out as premium and desirable.
Yeah, absolutely. And so looking at the service in the US, for example, we've seen the success of Pono, and their second crowdfunded as well for the actual financing of the company. And so did that sort of spur you on? Did that sort of validate the fact that there is a market out there for high-end music services?
Actually, not particularly what's been going on recently in the US and Pono and that thing, because we launched our hi-fi in Europe back in October. So it was that traction that really motivated us to look further ahead and look for expansion. Yeah. So I think we kind of proved our own case rather than looking around us. And when we now, let's say, go public with the first bigger international streaming service in high fidelity sound quality, and the interest around it, it's from manufacturers on the hi-fi side, it's from, let's say, hi-fi communities in general and people who like quality. That's been our motivation.
Absolutely, and I would imagine that's also going to be the focus of the rollout as far as potential partners are concerned, right?
Absolutely. And let's say in general, the interest we have from hi-fi manufacturers, well-known brands who basically for them, this is the only way of actually proving the capabilities of their great products with the sound quality. So, and they know that people will be using streaming to fill that equipment, and then there is a very interesting discussion to be had in terms of different corporations giving that starting point.
Absolutely, and the cool thing about the service is that you sort of are basing the entire thing on 44.1 kilohertz, which is great, and it means that essentially you get CD quality with every single release that you get on the service. What are your thoughts on going beyond that? And is there room for going beyond that? And do you think that you guys might go there at some point?
Yes, starting to talk about 24 bits versus 16 bits formats. There's definitely market interest there for the very, very, let's say, high segment or the real sound connoisseurs, but many of the systems aren't prepared to manage 24-bit now, but I think that everyone has it on the roadmap, and so do we. And we will be adding 24-bit content very soon, but then in more limited add-on catalog to the full, let's say, CD quality 16-bit offering. So it's more a supplement, and over time, maybe more and more will be even better sound quality than CD. But I think the initial hi-fi format as we have now is a fantastic evolution in itself. We are now giving people the opportunity to listen to music in CD quality, which should be a requirement on let's say, from an artist perspective, that's the way the music should be listened to. And that's actually a quote from Bob Lefsetz yesterday in his newsletter, saying that for him this was a really, really nice new experience to listen to stuff in CD quality on the streaming service.
Obviously. And finally, I want to ask you about, of course, I wrote in a piece this week the fact that Aspiro, which is the company that owns WIMP, essentially it's a public company, which is quite a rare thing. It's pretty unique for a major streaming service to be part of a public company. So did that sort of influence the way that you're going about the rollout? Because essentially, of course, being a higher priced and higher end service, you probably have you're not going to incur the same losses that, for example, a service like Spotify or Deezer incur in their price point. So was that also like a motivation to launch it as a high definition service at a higher price point?
Not particularly any specific link there, because obviously being a public company, then you have a vehicle to also get additional funding.
Sure, of course.
But then it's more a question of which priorities do we do at any given time, and for us it was more experience of competing in a very tough market where we did launch back in 2012. We launched a freemium model in some of our markets, but we felt that really didn't really change anything. It just became another, let's say, free music offering in these markets, and for us that was less interesting. We need to do stuff that's different, that stands out. Towards bigger competitors who now, let's say, have a strategy of grasping as many consumers on board as possible using the freemium model. So if we can, let's say, play on a different playing field, saying we want to talk to people who really care about music and sound, and they will have a higher willingness to pay as well.
Absolutely. And Peter, it was such a pleasure having you on. I'm really excited about the service. I think it was a brilliant move on your part. So good luck with it. And it's TIDALHiFi.com for anybody that wants to check it out and sign up for the pre-release access as soon as the service is released later this fall. Thanks again, Peter, for your time.
Great, thank you.
And so Wimp has made a really interesting move here. I'm pretty stunned by it in the sense that, you know, it's I thought it was genius. You know, when I read it, it's like, makes sense. There's no point competing on the lower price service. Let's just go for the high end service and try and partner with some high end audio manufacturers, you know, of speakers, of headphones, and try and get the momentum going from there. So. I want to tie this actually to the second news that is in the high definition streaming space, which is the fact that Deezer literally 4 hours ago announced the fact that they're also going to release a high definition streaming service in the US on the 15th of September. This is going to be completely tied to Sonos. It's going to cost again $20 a month. It's going to be the first foray of Deezer into the US market, and it's going to be available internationally, of course, this Deezer Elite service, but for the US it's going to be the only thing that's available for now. So taking these two news and sort of spinning them around any way you like it, Olivier, anything to say on that and sort of this rise in interest in high definition music, which is high definition relatively, because we're talking about CD quality, not higher than CD.
I think it's extremely smart to find like another angle to come in the market, because it's interesting if you see like Wimp, for instance, in Scandinavia, it's been there for quite a long time with an offer that is really different, but you are in the territory of Spotify. And still they found an audience. It's not like massive, but you really have an audience for them that are like probably more into classic, a bit older. They love to get the editorial that Wimp is providing, and you have an audience to that. So probably through some partners into the hi-fi, etc., they have a way to scale in other territories, and obviously I don't think they're like then competing with a Spotify or like soon Beats in the US. For Deezer, it's a very different scenario where they literally exploded in France and then did an incredible sprint to launch in many countries. Doing also a lot of deals with telco. In the US, the question is like, okay, we want to get there, but Spotify is here, iTunes is huge, there is also Rdio, there are like so many players. How can we do something different? They have like a financial behind that are strong, so I think it's a great angle to get there. Obviously it will still need quite a lot of marketing power to get your brand existing in the US, because I don't know many Americans in my friends that know Deezer, except in the industry.
Exactly, yeah. And Brian, this is kind of interesting. Two services that look very similar on the surface. The price point is the same. The audio quality, I think, is going to be around the same. It's FLAC for Deezer, but a very different market entry strategy. You know, Wimp with TIDAL is going to be available on app as well. I'm sure they're also going to be available on a variety of hardware devices. And Deezer is just locking itself into Sonos. Is this just that in order to get a market? Because if Sonos pushes this, then they can get into those homes?
Well, I mean, first off, I'm thrilled that FLAC is finally coming around. I mean,
Right.
we actually spun the Ziff Foundation off of our startup long ago, and it was really interesting because Apple crushed a lot of our formats. I mean, the formats really moved forward, but since Apple refused to adopt them because they didn't own any rights in them, they never caught on. So now that FLAC is coming around, this is fabulous. It's way better than MP3. Higher quality audio is a good thing. We really have to have no way to know, but many people suspect that part of the drop in music sales has been that music just doesn't sound as good when you're listening to it in one of these, compressed formats. And, as we can see from Neil coming out with Pono, and you can see from Rdio launching their higher quality service, I mean, and I have to assume that Beats is going to come out with a higher quality service. I mean, everyone is because, bandwidth is bigger and better and all of this stuff. So I think it's great. Do I think it's a winning proposition in and of itself? No. I mean, I sort of disagree with Olivier. It's like people have certain budgets and and since I've got my Beats subscription, I mean, I'm the guy who'll probably sign up to check out, but, I'll sign up first for the 30-day trial, and then if I find I'm never listening to Deezer, whatever, and if I find it's a better service, I'm going to use it. So really, it's a market entry point, but the proof will be up against the other competition. And so, I mean, it's really interesting. And one of the problems I see with a lot of these services is they sign these deals with the labels, and no one really knows how much the labels or the artists are getting paid.
Yeah,
and I mean,
sure.
I think that's one of Bandcamp's success is, the artist is getting the vast proportion of the money. And I kind of would like to see these guys out there saying, no, we have the better deal with the artist getting paid. Because I think while there's real concern about that, otherwise it's like, Beats is pre-installed on my computer, or Deezer comes with my ISP subscription, and it's going to be a battle for the marketplace. And it's really difficult to fight on we are going to pay the advances to get the distribution to be the mass service. So it comes down to what's the real economic business model, and how do you get to a sustainable business place without spending yourself out of business. And it's going to be, I mean, I'm very much looking forward to checking out Deezer, and the other one I know, Wimp, is not the best name for the U.S., so they're launching under, what's their other
TIDAL.
name again?
TIDAL.
Yeah, I mean, that's a much better...
I like it. It's like a disaster movie. I don't know.
Yeah, but it's the tidal wave of music.
Tidal
I mean,
wave of music.
The day after tomorrow,
and we'll
right?
try it out, but it's still going to be hard to get the mind share away from what comes with your AT&T cell phone subscription, what ships on your Apple and or Samsung device, or what, and you got to look at the reality of the situation, and does it end up costing you more than you're going to make from the people who keep using your service? So
exactly.
I think it's great they're coming in, but really it's going to be how effectively can you market and get the mind share, or else you probably won't make much of an impact.
Yeah. Yeah, Kevin, on your front, on the CD Baby front, it's quite interesting to hear your take as a distributor. I mean, I seem to remember that all the streaming services receive the files lossless, or at least at the highest quality you guys have it, and then they compress it at their end, right? So theoretically, they all have the capability of doing a CD quality service.
Most of them, yeah. We do some conversion before we send it to some of the places. I mean, the interesting thing about high-res is we've actually been selling FLAC files on cdbaby.com for a long time, and I think the biggest hang-up, it kind of taps into what Brian was talking about, is that for some of the average user, if you're not like an audiophile that knows how these other formats work, sometimes it's really a pain to get them on your device.
Right.
And if you're streaming in high res, that I'm hoping that a lot of the streaming services will be working to improve their quality. But as far as getting a download that's going to have a lot of quality, CD quality still in there, we need to come a ways with how you actually understanding in the marketplace of what the file is, how you use it. It doesn't work with iTunes, so it's sort of...
If it won't play on your player, then people don't want it.
Yeah, exactly.
And Kevin, do you think that this? I mean, I seem to remember when I talked to Kjartan, who's one of the people that work at WIMP at South by Southwest, and they were mentioning the fact that actually the high definition service yields high royalties for artists as well. So do you believe that that's going to be a trend that continues on this front?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the thing that worries me most is also what Brian mentioned, is that you have all these backroom deals that happen where nobody knows what's really going on. That, you know, all the streaming services get in line to try and be the one to say that they pay artists most, but until you know what's really happening on the back end, you really can't say who's doing what. All I know is what you get when you get your streaming royalty checks, and they're pretty small when comparison to what you were probably seeing in the past. Yeah. And it's a matter of, hey, once we build a sustainable model where there aren't these backroom deals enabling everything, then we can kind of see what's going to be the best economic model for artists. And, you know, that's my opinion. And a lot of these deals on the high res stuff, it benefits a small select few, the people that they think they have to have their music in order to even launch, and for people to care.
Of course. And I guess like can squeeze in a little sort of plug on what you guys are up to at the moment, because I like to do that halfway now, because it's a little bit more fun. And you know, Olivia, on your front, how's things going with your turn? And can you give us like a 20-second overview of the service, just for anybody that may have not heard you on the show before or seen the service before?
Yeah, sure. So Your Turn is basically a social place where you take your turn, and we drop like call to action for people to express in a different way. So basically, you all guys know about selfies, about how much like the millennials are expressing themselves and sharing things with friends. And here it's really about like dropping a topic and getting people to take their turn on it by either like drawing something or taking a picture and sharing it to friends. So in the recent development, there's like, we obviously work a lot with the music industry, and recently we did some really cool stuff with Pharrell Williams, for instance, or Banks. Yeah. And also we got a lot of brands actually approaching us. And we are like opening step by step this to brands, and we worked this summer on a really important campaign with Pepsi worldwide, and it was in the context of the World Cup. So it was driving both like Lionel Messi, for instance, but also artists that were creating music for Pepsi, and it's been really successful. And now we're like slightly step by step, like opening to more brands, and it's really like taking the essence of Your Turn, which is like how can you drive engagement and get this value available for the brands.
Absolutely, that's fantastic.
Really exciting.
And the site is yourturn.com, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So go and check it out. There's going to be links in the show notes as well. And Brian, SF Music Tech is coming up in San Francisco in November. So any indication of what's going to happen, and any early leaks on attendees or cool keynotes or anything like that?
Well, it's going to be fabulous, as always, and I hope to see a bunch of you there. I know at least one of you, hopefully all three of you, hopefully all 40,000 of you out there in the audience will come, and it's November 11th. It's going to be there's going to be focus on high-quality audio, of course, so I hope to loop in, you know, Deezer and WIMP. We've got Rdio, we've got some rock stars, we've got all sorts of folks, but really it's about coming and moving everything forward. So we're really, really excited about that. And we're actually, I don't know when this show is going to air, but tomorrow
Thursday.
So right now we are announcing the Future of Money and Technology Summit for December 2nd. So futureofmoney.com, that's my other interest. And I actually have a very interesting startup that I'm forming right now that combines music, artists getting paid, and money. So maybe I'll come back in a few weeks and talk about that. But yeah, everything's great.
Awesome.
So if you guys come to sfmusictech.com, you can find out more about what we're up to, and would love to have you there and involved.
Awesome. And finally, Kevin, we actually plugged CD Baby last week because I covered in Berlin, we covered the news of CD Baby Free. On that note, or anything else that you want to mention, anything you'd like to plug?
Well, yeah, at CD Baby, we've just been doing a lot of work with kind of shoring up our base with our own website and some of our music promotion tools. So we have a new music player that we built based on a lot of feedback from artists, allows them to feature music. They can create tons of players so bloggers can embed them. They can feature the whole catalog in any order, however they want to put it together. And so that's something we just released. And then on top of that, allowing artists to sell music, get their music up on CD Baby without any sort of sign-up fee. Just a lot of people that, artists, instead of having stuff scattered about the web, they have tracks that are maybe B-sides or live cuts or things that they hadn't wanted to distribute. Or, they used TuneCore or somebody else and wanted to get access to the fan base at cdbaby.com. So now they can without having to pay for distribution. And it works similar to how Bandcamp works.
Awesome, that's great, and that's on cdbaby.com, and also check out the DIY musician blog. I'll put the show notes, the links in the show notes as well, and that's another project of Kevin's. And Rdio is back. Rdio, after months of like a complete darkness in terms of news from the company, is back. They've launched a redesigned service, and they have launched a freemium essentially version in 20 countries starting today. That was first reported by Ben Cesario of the New York Times, I believe, and so the music streaming service had actually dipped its waters. Dipped its toes. I'm losing it already. It's terrible. And in the free music space with a radio service earlier this year, actually late last year, but now it's going fully freemium, and it's partnered with Cumulus Media, which means that they're going to be able to serve advertising to the consumers that are listening to the free version of the service without having to spend a ton of money on hiring a bunch of ad salespeople, which is great for them. And my question is sort of where does Rdio stand now? Of course, the service hasn't managed to gain the same amount of momentum as Spotify, and of course, it's pretty well known and pretty well used within our tech community, but maybe not so much with the mainstream public or the public at large. So, but Brian, what are your thoughts on Rdio, and how do you feel that the company can make a comeback if it does?
Well, I mean, Rdio it's a solid service. They've got the licenses. They've got a good team. They just bought the Tastemaker X team. I was an advisor over there. They're doing so much tie-ins and partnerships that, and they have a huge amount of money backing them, and they're able to do these huge deals. So, I mean, on one side, everyone could get bored and the plug could get pulled. But on the other hand, they might be able to do these partnership deals on a scale that is really hard for the other folks to do. And it's a good service. So when you have an offering that's a good service, but you're not getting the traction, what do you do?
Right.
You do certain things. They're doing, the higher res audio. Okay, we're going to upgrade. Okay, so now there's other competitors in the space, but they're there too. You do the deal with Cumulus, where I think they're getting, I don't know if their number's public, but they're getting like a huge amount of ads and publicity that they don't actually have to pay for. And I don't see anyone else going out there and doing these like huge, where like hundreds of millions of people are going to be exposed to the messaging. So, I mean, they've got as good a shot as almost anyone who's not owned by Apple.
Nice. I like it. It was a diplomatic answer. And Olivia, on your front, of course, we're here in Europe. Rdio is perhaps stronger in the States. How do you feel about the service right now? And the redesign is beautiful, by the way. Like, if people haven't checked it out, they should go and download the Rdio app and give it a go, because it's a beautiful redesign. So
I was about to say, like, they're always amazing me with product. To be honest, I have not seen today, but. It's really a company that has like a culture of doing like super sleek products, and caring about the users, then it's been. I really agree with Brian on that. Like they are incredibly smart with the biz dev they're doing. Like Shazam deal was really good, and they did tons of other deals where you really get at an emotional connection for the user where it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think on that level, like Rdio has been really amazing. Then like for some reasons, like, you know, maybe it's they're not as different, or Spotify is too much, or I don't know, but they never made it to get really like a strong success.
Yeah.
And in Europe, it's true that they have a challenge with the brand. But they have solid finance behind, and looks like they have time, and sometimes being patient is a good strategy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Kevin, of course, you probably know more than all of us what the financial impact of Rdio is, but of course you're not in the position to disclose that. But what are your thoughts about Rdio, you know, as somebody that works in the space 24/7 and sort of sees how people are making use of different services?
Well, I mean, we have some folks here at CD Baby that are diehard Rdio users that love the interface and still think it's superior to what Beats is doing. And me personally, you know, I feel like if they're not tied to a device, it's going to be a tough road. It seems like Spotify's been able to tackle the market with people listening at work on their desktops and some in the mobile space, but it seems like without some sort of like bigger hook than just redesigning. It's free, so a lot more people will try it out now.
Yeah.
But it's still, I can go listen to whatever I want on Spotify, so why would I come to Rdio when I can't do that? So that's where I feel like things are going to fall, but they do have amazing design. I will give them that they do put together a very nice interface. I personally would like all of the multiple services to catch on, so there's some good competition, and that it doesn't just become one person dominating the market. But it seems like these days, if you're not tied to a device, it's really hard to get you know, known and get people. But
there is that device that Giannis and them have built. I forget the name. It looks like a cone, but everyone says it's really, really cool. So maybe that was there. Oh, well, next show you can cover it. Right. But it's a beautiful looking device, and maybe their attack on, you know, what's beyond Sonos, and that may be another point of entry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's exciting stuff, and you know, I'm giving it another go now, and I think, you know, I seem to remember a few months ago, or maybe like even a year or two ago, that somebody at Spotify was talking about the timeline of users converting from free to premium, and it was a fairly long period of time. You know, it took like 6 to 12 months for a lot of users to actually jump the ship and decide to go and pay for the service, and until it became indispensable essentially for them. So the fact that they are becoming a free service could lead a lot more people to try it out in the long term, and then eventually decide to switch. So it's definitely a long game here that they have to play with users. Spotify announced a brand new toolkit for brands that want to make an impact in the advertising side of the company, of course on the free portion of the service. So perhaps they realize that they need to monetize the service a little better when it comes to advertising, and they can probably charge more for video content, and the company in fact introduced a new video feature which also allows complete takeovers of the Spotify client, and it will also work on mobile. So if you are using the free version of Spotify on a tablet or on a mobile phone, of course with different functionality between the two, you're going to get a video advert that starts playing, and brands will have the opportunity to actually sponsor that you know, view of the video of the advert, and provide you with 30 minutes of uninterrupted playback if you experience the entire advert, which could be 15 or 30 seconds. So this kind of, it's funny because this reminded me of the company Guvera that launched in Australia a few years ago, and they were doing brand tie-ups, and the brands were sponsoring the listening experience of the users, and this seems to have come around into Spotify in a sense. I guess, Olivier, on your front, how do you feel about this? How do you think users will take to adverts taking over their Spotify client that are used to the normal audio adverts and sort of more marginal video, interactive advertising on the platform?
It's so. I mean, so many times I felt we were not taking the opportunity to do more advertising, more smart advertising on free streaming services. And it's really good news to see Spotify arriving there. And as you said, like probably trying to charge more for what they give.
Yeah.
And they can really charge more because music is so cool. There is so value for that. And I think to me, like the most important thing is like video. Yeah. And it sounds a little bit bizarre at start, but like video is like something where you can guarantee to the brands that you have like a completed view, a real engagement, and if it's the right brand, and I think it's really a good proposal. Yeah. Then on a consumer level, the proposal to tell you like, listen, you're gonna have to watch now that video that is 15, 30 seconds. But for that, I'm going to give you like 30 minutes free of any ads. I think it's quite cool. It's much more interesting. They ask me for a little bit of attention, but then I have 30 minutes for free. And it's maybe less intrusive than the audio that it's always the same voice, etc. And that you just hate it. So I think it's a smart move from Spotify, and I think the market is also like both the company and the market are desperate to find great way to reach the new audience.
Yeah, absolutely, and I guess Brian, for me this feels like a move that should lead to a better monetization and of course a easier turn into profitability for Spotify. Of course that's their ultimate goal. I was wondering about granularity though, so I don't know if you had any thoughts on that. I saw that the brand partners include Ford, McDonald's, Coca-Cola, NBC Universal Pictures and Nike. So in that sense it just doesn't feel like they're going to be able to deliver the granularity that we're hoping for.
Well, I mean, making it easier to pump more money into these systems is I mean, it's necessary. I mean, we're talking about, a whole bunch of new systems coming into the marketplace like now. So, when you make it easier for people to pump money in, that supports the whole ecosystem. So, is the experience going to be as good? Well, if it's done well, hopefully it will be. But, but when you can get more big brands vying for the same exposure, the rates go up, and that helps the services, and that helps the artists, hopefully, depending on the deals. And, it's not a bad thing. I mean, I know the last time Kevin and I were on your show, there was a big debate about, Beats and whether, oh my God, it's horrible because there's no free tier. And I'm like, well, if you have to support the 97% that isn't going to pay a monthly fee, it's a very different economics. And there comes a point in time you've got to stop running these loss leaders if you don't want to take a loss. And if you're going to, maybe instead of stopping running it, you change it a different way where there's direct monetization, and you can totally figure out if that 30-second ad is going to cover the 30 minutes of listening. And sometimes, I mean, I'm a .com guy, but I'm also a business guy, and I really like it when money actually flows in a greater amount than what the service costs to provide. And,
one of those old school business guys,
business as opposed to just going for market share. So I think it's a no-brainer that it's good. It may or may not be a better experience for the people who are listening without paying, but you got to pay for, there's got to be money flowing through the system, so it's good.
Yeah, exactly. Kevin, do you, I guess you welcome this as well. I mean, from the point of view of the artist that's trying to make a living out of this, monetizing free is still important. I mean, there's a lot of people that are listening to free streaming services today, so.
Yeah, I think to me, as long as they execute it in a way that doesn't, make a horrible user experience where there's flashing ads and everything where you don't even want to be on the site anymore, then I think it's a good step for them to, you know, they got to make more ad revenue. I mean, Brian's right, you got to support the freeloaders. So
I mean, I guess
you got to pay for them somehow. But you know, if it's done well, it could open up some conversations about artists getting more money from that. If, you know, based on, you know, if your music's getting a high click-through rate, then maybe you deserve a bigger cut, and not just being, you know, similar to what happens over at YouTube. So who knows?
Absolutely. And I'd like to mention also on this, talking about Spotify, that Elliot Van Buskirk, who was editor of Evolver.fm, which was an Econest, the editorial arm of the Econest, has launched a new site, which is Spotify Insights, which is on insights.spotify.com. And there's going to be a blog where he analyzes some of the data that comes from the consumption of music on the streaming service, and sort of put a journalistic editorial spin on that, and tell us interesting things about how people are consuming music. And the first post is around the journey of genres that originated in Berlin, London, and Paris, and it's well worth a read. So go and check out insights.spotify.com, and best of luck to Elliot with this new venture, which looks really interesting. And just want to introduce a quick interview that I recorded just a couple of hours ago with Mike McCready, the CEO of Music X-Ray, a company that is heavily involved in the Future Music Forum in Barcelona. I'm heading out there next week for a couple of days, and so he's going to tell us a little bit about what's going to go down there, and a little bit about Music X-Ray. So, really great to welcome Mike McCready to the show, the CEO of Music X-Ray. So hi, Mike, and thanks for joining me. How's it going?
It's going great. Thanks for having me on again. I love your. I've become an avid reader of your site.
It's great to have you. And so I wanted to sort of catch up quickly about both the Future Music Forum in Barcelona that's happening next week, and about Music X-Ray. So you know, first of all, about the Future Music Forum. So what's exciting you this year? Of course, it's a 2-day conference for people that don't know about it. That's happening in Barcelona. It's been going on for a few years now. I went to at least 2 editions beforehand. So tell us a little bit about what's exciting you about this year's edition.
Yeah, it's in its 5th year.
Right?
It gets a little bit bigger every year. And for this year, we added a day onto the front of it called Music X-Ray Day. So we have about 40 industry professionals, from major label A&R people to music supervisors and licensors, that are coming over just for that day, and of course staying also for through Future Music Forum. So they'll be adding a lot to Future Music Forum as well. You know, I think it's getting a little higher level. I mean, we've always had top executives come, but it seems like now there's more of them, CEOs of music tech companies. We have Sam Tarantino this year, who's CEO of Groove Shark, as you know, the founder of Groove Shark. So it'll be interesting to hear what's going on with him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They just got dropped from Chromecast as well, so definitely a topic of conversation there. And there's loads of people, you know, from Mark Mulligan, Scott Cohen, Alex White, Benji Rogers from Pledge, a whole host of interesting guests. And I'll be doing a panel as well. We're doing a panel on new revenue streams for artists and labels with Spotify and Music Glue and Cooking Vinyl, which should be great. So really excited about that one. And so you know, you mentioned Music X-Ray earlier. What's going on with the company? What's been happening in the last year?
Oh wow! Well, we have. We've had a lot of things going on this year. Of course, it's sort of the same thing with Future Music Forum. We keep getting deeper and deeper adoption with the major labels on Music X-Ray. We've added a lot more features to help industry professionals identify songs that are high potential or high market potential songs and talent. So these tools have enabled a lot of the industry professionals to simply mine them from our site. A lot of times, even when they're not submitted songs that were you know, for a specific opportunity, they can still mine our site for quality based on, you know, the collective ratings of all of the industry professionals. It's a very cool system.
That's awesome, and I get alerts every now and again. It seems like there's some really interesting opportunities on the site for songwriters and musicians that are looking for placement. So pretty exciting stuff. And you know, Mike, it was such a pleasure having you on. For people that are looking to find more information about either, they need to head to futuremusicforum.com for the conference. Of course, it's a little bit late now if you're coming from overseas to book travel, but if you can make like it, then do. And also for Music X-Ray, of course, it's musicxray.com, and you can find all the information about the company there. Mike, thanks so much for joining me today, and look forward to seeing you next week. And we're back, and it's going to be the last story of today. We have a lot of ground to cover, but this last story again goes into talking more generally about monetization, and it's around Twitter, so another big company, and no startups this week. It's all fairly established players in the industry, but Twitter announced that they would begin testing a buy button on a small number of users. So this buy button will not redirect users to a website or a third-party company that's selling the goods, but it will actually create the transaction right within the app. You just have to add your credit card services, credit card details for the first time, and then after that you're just going to be able to buy stuff directly. And they're doing this through the company Stripe, which incidentally was actually also an Apple partner for the new Apple Pay program. So given that the majority of artists have the majority of users that have millions and millions of followers are artists, it's going to be interesting to see how they make use of this buy button, and if they can convert some of their followers into actually hard cash. So on that note, Kevin, I guess I'd start with you, because you guys do all sorts of different types of sales, and how do you feel this can affect the way musicians are able to sell stuff on Twitter, and are you excited about this? I mean, I think it could be pretty cool around both CD sales and merchandise sales.
You know what? I've never been all that excited about selling on Twitter. Chirpify came out a few years back and didn't really seem to catch on. It's just nothing that when I'm on Twitter, I'm not shopping. That's me personally. I'm there reading stuff. When I go shopping for something, I like to do research and price comparisons, and I don't really see an impulsive buy button in Twitter. Frankly, I'd be more concerned I'd hit it when I didn't want to buy something than when I did. But I don't know. I've seen companies like Chirpify test this and not really catch on. Twitter may be able to do some sort of integration that works better. To me, it's not. It doesn't really fit in my opinion, what people are trying to do on Twitter.
That's interesting. Like I was just thinking about for artists, it could be interesting if you're playing on that impulse purchase kind of feeling that, oh, we got this limited edition thing, or we got this coming out, and you can buy it with a click. But I don't know, Olivier, well, how do you feel about this?
So it's really interesting, because you're saying like if you tweet, etc. My question is like, let's say you tweet now about something exclusive, so a collector DVD of the show today, 200 episodes, and I click on that, what's happening? And it's going to be like how easy they make it for me to create my account with my credit card, etc. Yeah. Because the complexity of the transaction is that moment. It's trust and how easy it is. So yesterday we saw Apple coming with Apple Pay, and it's quite amazing how they are not inventing this, but they're going to be able to scale this in an incredible way. Yeah. And the question is now how Twitter can handle that part, because to me it's where there is the complexity. Yeah. Then I agree with Kevin. Like when you're on Twitter, you're not necessarily here like to buy immediately something, but still like for ticketing, some merchandising that is exclusive, etc. For sure, it has an impact.
Cool. And Brian, last word to you on the story.
Come on, guys! It's a game changer. This is going to change everything.
I felt really good about this. You
mentioned some other company, hoser company that Twitter hated and said that didn't work. But the Stripe guys, we featured them at Future of Money. They get it. And when you have an artist who's got millions of followers posting about something, it may not get that much traction, but if I'm out there selling, a couple $100 tickets and it turns into thousands and thousands of dollars of sales, or, Zoe Keating when she's out there doing her thing and all of a sudden, 30,000 people buy her CD, that's a house. So I think this is a real game changer.
You're assuming they're not buying it because they weren't on Twitter.
So here's the story. It's not a matter of that, but what'll happen often is I'll hear about something on Twitter. It's scrolling down my screen. I'll be like, oh yeah, I got to think about that later when I'm not on the bus, and I never get back to it. But if it's like, buy it and I can click on it, that's we have such a short attention span theater as epitomized by Twitter. So if all of a sudden, instead of being, oh, that's cool, I should think about looking it up sometime later, if all of a sudden that's changed to, ooh, there's a cool event tonight, and I know that that's coming, Eventbrite doesn't have the integration yet, which I really, really want. But down the road, I think everyone will be integrated. I think it's a total awesome, major cash-generating game changer.
I think for events, that's going to be really interesting, because if you can literally buy the ticket from there, and you see somebody like Olivier tweets about an event that he's going to next week. And
last-minute ticket, who wants it now? Boom. Click, buy, go to the show, game changer.
Yeah, it's frictionless, right? Because otherwise you have to click on the link, and even if it is an Eventbrite, you still have to probably be redirected to the app and sort of go through all that rigmarole. If you can do it on Twitter, then it becomes a lot easier. But it's all going to come down to, I guess, what kind of money they are charging for this and how companies feel about giving that chunk away to Twitter. But yeah, I'm excited about it. But
I'm gonna come down firmly on the side of the results are going to be very disappointing.
Nice. I like it. I like a bit of a controversy on the show, and that's pretty much it. I don't even want to go there. I'd put the Garth Brooks Ghost Tunes story in the lineup, but I just don't think there's any point talking about it. It's literally like demoralizing to read about. I don't know if anybody.
I'm not so sure. Can I talk about it for about 10 seconds? I'll try to keep it to that. So here's the story. Anytime you have a new product that people can pay $30 for and most of the money goes to the artist, it may only be tight towards their fan base, but that's really, really good. Right. The services, and I don't think he's even on the other services. I'm a Garth fan. I listen to the album. He gets, I don't even want to guess the tiny amount of money. It's like when Bon Jovi did his free concert online. It was free to everybody, 30 minutes. Then it said, okay, unless you're a member of the fan club, you're done. And then the people to listen to the last 2 hours had to sign up to his fan club. It started at $59.95 and went up to thousands of dollars. Any chance you give the fan to give $30 directly to the artist, that's good. In my humble opinion.
It is, But at the same time,
the service does not seem as compelling as it should.
There's absolutely no need to create an entire service around it. What I said last week, though, it's the most expensive affiliate sale scheme ever to create an entire service around the off chance.
That's a big question I think we're going to see a lot of as we move forward in the next couple of months. Artists creating their own services and how that will play out both for those artists as well as the entire ecosystem.
Right. Yeah, my take was like, do something else. Like either give the a lossless download, or do something else other than just being a straight up download store. But yeah, that was my take on it. But no, it's exciting. It's $30 if you're a fan of his. Of course, you can get the entire back catalog, which is great because he never put it up on digital formats. He was one of the last holdouts. Really, there's not that many left anymore these days. And I think with that we have come to the end of the show. And it was a pretty big one today. It was exciting.
Happy anniversary!
And exhausting, and it was the anniversary. So thank you so much for joining me today on this anniversary episode of Digital Music Trends. I would have loved to do an event, but I've just been running around the last 3 weeks between Cologne and Berlin and Barcelona next week, so I didn't get a chance to. I'm sure at some point I will do some drinks soon in London. That will be fun. I don't do events. That's your business, Brian. I can't do this.
Gotta make it on out.
Even just the idea of booking a venue, I'm just like, oh my god, it's too much for me. Thanks so much for joining me, guys. It was such a pleasure having you again. cdbaby.com, sfmusictech.com, and yourturn.com. And thanks so much for listening. You can find out more on digitalmusictrends.com. Also check out the DMT one-to-one show, which comes out every week. And I'd also like to thank the sponsor of this podcast, Play MPE, and you can find more on plaympe.com. Thanks so much for listening. Have a fantastic week, and till next time.